been a rough year for movies, but it's okay because now A Quiet Place Day 1 is here to save the box office alongside Inside Out 2, which, by the way, I will also have a review for up shortly. But yeah, how was A Quiet Place? It was alright. I feel like I should say this up front. I'm not really a huge fan of the Quiet Place franchise to begin with. I enjoyed the 2 previous movies. I definitely liked the first one more, and the second movie pretty much left my mind the moment I exited the theater. I'd actually forgot that there was even a second movie to begin with up until they announced this new one. I was like, oh yeah, there is a fucking second movie. Jeez, dude, relax. But even so, I still had fun and enjoyed my time with those movies. And I could say the same for this new installment, A Quiet Place Day 1. Now, yes, I think you could say that this is the biggest and the baddest movie in the franchise so far. I think that's what it's advertising itself as. There's like an astronomical amount of aliens, a surprising amount of blood for a PG-13 movie, and plenty of scenes of people just, trying to stay quiet and avoid being ripped to shreds. But by the end, all these things kind of ran thin for me, and dare I even say it, I was sort of bored watching this movie. But before we get into the negative, let's talk about the positives. First of which being, I liked the setting of the movie, which again, is the biggest selling point of the movie, right? New York City is getting overran by aliens yet again. Exciting stuff. We have never seen this before. But okay, jokes aside, as cool as the setting is, I do think the best thing this movie has going for it though, are these characters, right? With a movie like this, with a premise like this, they could have gone balls to the wall crazy. They could have shown the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building just up in flames being toppled, or shown Central Park and Times Square just being overran by these aliens, but they don't. They could have hit all the major iconic landmarks and just filled it up with aliens and just done another disaster movie, but instead, the movie stays true to these characters' stories. Not to say that the movie doesn't take advantage of its setting, I'm just saying that even though its concept is huge in scale, the movie thankfully still keeps things grounded and personal. And that's largely thanks to Lupita Nyong'o, who almost entirely carries this movie. And I mean, as always, she delivers a great performance here. With this movie and then Jordan Peele's Us like a couple years ago, I think she's pretty much mastered that like scared shitless horror movie look. You know what I'm talking about. And same could be said about Joseph Quinn, famously known for his character in Stranger Things. And I'm not really sure why people were calling this dude a one-hit wonder with his Stranger Things character. I don't understand that, because it was obvious already from that show that this dude can act. And then this movie just furthers that. I mean, he's great. Juxtaposing Lupita's sorrowful and almost angry performance as Sam, Quinn's character Eric is oftentimes completely frozen in place by shock and fear. Like, he's just so overwhelmed by almost everything that's happening. One funny thing I will mention about Eric as a character, though, is that he basically just shows up in the movie. And yeah, you might be thinking, that's how every character is introduced in movies. They have to show up to then become characters. Which, yes, obviously, but you'll know what I mean when you see it. He just pops into the movie around the 40-minute mark. Quite literally. There's no real way to describe it other than that. He just comes out of a hole in the ground, and now he's a main character in this movie. And right after he pops out of said hole, he kind of just spouts his entire life story and his background and all the lore surrounding him in this very expositional dialogue. And that is one of my more minor gripes with this movie. The movie does tend to rely on expositional dialogue, and I couldn't help but find it noticeable. Granted, they do try to make it seem as natural as possible, so it's not a major gripe or anything, but both times we're introduced to our main characters, they feel the need to just exposition dump what's going on with them. But with what the movie gives us, we're able to infer everything that they say in those introductory scenes anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I guess what I'm just trying to say is that I thought that some of the exposition was a little bit unnecessary, and I didn't think the movie needed to completely spell out certain things right away for us. I guess with modern audiences, filmmakers just feel the need to spoon feed and handhold a lot. I just don't really know. I don't know. But to circle back around and finish up my positives, I found the plot to be pretty funny, actually, and kind of sweet. To put it briefly, Sam's character is dying of cancer, and since the end of the world is happening, she makes a journey out to Harlem to have one final slice of her favorite pizza. And that's established within like the first couple minutes of the movie. And I really enjoyed that motif throughout Quiet Place Day 1. The destruction of normalcy and the relationship that both the wilderness and civilization have with one another. In this new apocalyptic world, I mean, life as we know it is gone. We can't enjoy music anymore, or have a laugh, or even cry, or scream, or have any kind of outburst. You can't even talk without whispering anymore. You'll never be able to have that dish from your favorite restaurant ever again, or be able to enjoy a night out with your friends, or read a new book from your favorite author. Even the simplest and most mundane things in your everyday life, like going shopping for something completely inconsequential, are just gone forever. And the only times you may be able to experience these kind of things, acts that oftentimes are associated with the detachment of the natural world, is now completely dependent on the natural world. You can only experience this stuff when the natural world allows it. Like when it's raining and the sounds of thunder are able to mask that sound so the aliens can't eat you. It's just interesting stuff, like that kind of relationship between chaos and order and wilderness and civilization as we know it, the modern day. It's very interesting, at least to me it was. That being said though, the New Yorkers in this movie just didn't give a fuck about any of that, what I just said. There was like military helicopters flying overhead over the city constantly with speakers saying, "Do not make noise and stay inside." And man, these New Yorkers just did not care. The idea that these people can't go 30 minutes without going about their daily lives is funny as shit to me, dude. And lastly, for positives, I enjoyed the ending of the movie a lot, actually. I liked how these characters' stories came to an end. Sam's able to leave this world on her own terms rather than even having that stripped away from her because of her cancer. And Eric is given another chance at life following his copious amounts of failures, apparently. Their arcs just come full circle, and I think it's pretty well done, actually. But moving on to my negatives, and I don't think I have too many, actually. Some quick minor ones that I have, though. I thought the movie kind of suffered from like that green screen look. Some of the cityscape stuff in the background particularly just looked like green screen to me. And it probably was, right? It just kind of looks fake sometimes. Maybe they actually shot it on location in New York City. I have no idea. I'm not going to do any research for that. I'm just reviewing what I saw. And sometimes the direction was a bit confusing. Like just as an example, and I totally understand that this is incredibly nitpicky. Like I'm just going to be a fucking film snob right now. But at the very end specifically, like the final moments of the movie, there's a moment where Sam and Eric are looking at each other, and there's just no way that they could have been looking at each other. Their eye lines were just not at all the same. When you watch the scene, okay, just keep an eye out for, well, I mean, their eye lines. They just don't match. Like, it's impossible. There's no way that they're looking. There's no way that they have eye contact during the scene. And it kind of reminded me of that scene from Phantom Menace where Obi-Wan is like hanging in the pit. He looks, quote unquote, looks at his lightsaber. But like, again, there's no way that he's looking at his lightsaber. There's no line of sight. It's literally impossible. He's in a pit. And this exact thing happens in Quiet Place Day 1, but it's a bit more egregious in my opinion. But again, that's me being a complete film douchebag, right? That's super nitpicky bullshit. Like, that's not even a real negative. I just think that some of the direction throughout the movie, it was kind of like that, just little moments like that where like the edit was a little strange or some of the eye lines just didn't quite match up. But again, it's just me being a fucking bitch. But as for my major gripes with the movie, the first of which is that it just isn't scary. And listen, I get it that this is like a subjective thing, but to me, this movie had like the least effective scares and the least tense moments out of the entire franchise. I never once for a second thought anybody was gonna die, like ever. Not Sam, not Eric, and definitely not that cat. That cat was never going to die in this movie. And since no one was ever going to die to these aliens, that kind of sucked out a lot of the tension for me in these scenes. And it also doesn't help that the aliens' speed was just very inconsistent. Like in some scenes, they're able to scale buildings almost instantly, and they're able to chase cars going full speed. But then when it came to just like ground chases, they could never catch our main characters. They're just on foot. It's not like they have an advantage on, I don't know, whatever. Again, maybe that's a nitpick. Sure, I don't know. Plot armor is what I'm getting at. And normally, I'm pretty good at turning off my brain and just enjoying things for what they are. I praise that very thing very often on this channel. But with a horror movie, I feel like it's pretty important to be scary, and this movie was just not. On top of that, as mentioned earlier, I do think this franchise has kind of ran itself thin for me. I mean, with 3 movies now and a video game on the way, I can't help but question where this franchise can even go. Watching people quietly creep around aliens got boring in A Quiet Place 2 for me, and it got boring even quicker in this movie. And even though I thought the character work was pretty good here, I thought the movie itself was just a little cliche and a little tired. I don't know, it was a little boring for me. You have all the standard day 1 apocalypse tropes here, right? People watching the news, seeing police and military personnel driving into the distance, our characters standing side by side as they look off into the distance as their home is being taken from them. Life as they know it is being destroyed before their very eyes. And people turning on each other, in the face of whatever new threat. It's just like all those genre tropes, And I get it. A movie like this has to have these things. They are genre tropes for a reason. But I couldn't help but think like what separates this movie from the rest? Like what does this movie do differently? And I couldn't really tell you. It's very run-of-the-mill. And I think that treading of familiar ground is ultimately going to lead this movie to being not as memorable as I think people might want it to be. I think this is going to be a movie that people watch and enjoy for sure, but sort of forget about within a couple weeks, That's just my opinion. Maybe that's really harsh, and I don't like being harsh in movies. It's just kind of how I felt. For me, the best parts of this movie were when our two main characters were just sitting around and spending time with each other, not the whole getting chased and killed by alien stuff. I didn't find it to be very scary or suspenseful. It just didn't do a lot for me personally. Though that being said, there is a great moment in this movie towards the beginning where like a father kills a man who just can't be quiet in order to save his own son. And moments like that I thought were sorely missing in this movie. You really feel like the gravity of the situation there. The son understands that his dad had to do what needed to be done, right? Like, you know, to keep everybody alive. And I mean, of all places, New York City would have been a great setting to have tons of human interactions and scenes like that, but we don't really. Most of the movie is just these two characters. There's not really other people in this movie. And on a final note, I couldn't help but find it funny how many fucking aliens landed in New York City. Like at the beginning of Quiet Place 2, only a small handful of aliens land and attack the town, but Jesus fucking Christ, this movie, dude, there's like thousands of aliens that land in New York City, and they run that shit to the ground. It was like aliens knew where to land to kill the most amount of people. I wonder if like in space, the aliens were sitting up there, you know, looking down at Earth, and they were just listening in and planning their attack. You know, oh, yo, New York City is fucking loud. We should send all of our dudes down there and just kill everybody. But that small town with John Krasinski, just send like 1 or 2 guys down there. That's fine. I mean, shit, could you imagine if they were reversed? Like, imagine all the aliens in this movie attacking New York City just landed in the suburbs of some random town. I don't know how the aliens knew where to land. I don't know. It seemed a little funny. Was it a coincidence? I don't know if the writers even thought about that. They're probably just like, New York City, send all the fucking aliens to New York. I don't know. I'm fucking around, okay? Anyway, though, yeah, I'm done talking about this movie. Those are my general thoughts. Quiet Place Day 1 was a fun enough time. It's definitely something that I'm probably not going to watch again, but I'm not mad that I watched it the one time. Check it out if you're interested, and comment below what you thought about it if you did see it. More reviews coming out soon. I'm back. I know I took a little bit of a break there, but that's it, guys. Much love.